When I first met Ray, I wasn't expecting to meet someone with the enthusiasm that Vic Lindell displayed. Whenever you spoke to him, his face just lit up because he always wanted to talk about volleyball. Ray was a tireless worker and looked out to help anyone he could in volleyball. Integrity and intensity was always very important to him, but Ray was always very humble on his accomplishments.
We started as greenhorns in grade 11, and by the end of that, we were referees. We had done introductory skills clinics for BCVA at that time, and we made it to the BC Boys Provincial Finals and did well there. We became sort of the first employees of BC Volleyball Association when Ray suggested that we put together a proposal that would see us deliver volleyball clinics to Vancouver elementary schools. So what we did was very simple, is that we sent a mailing out to all the schools, elementary schools, and suggested that we would come and work with their coaches and their students and teach them how to play volleyball, complete with skill development and all those kinds of things. And so we sent the letters out, and then the work began because we got lots of response. Grade 12 and the year after, we coached the Templeton Senior Girls volleyball team, and we made it to the provincials that year. And we kept playing, of course. We formed our own team. We also took advantage of what was going on with Vic Lindell and the Kelowna's women's team, and they were very gracious to have us and join in many of their practices, and we became their cannon fodder. I could always count on Ray to give 100%, and knew that as a player he would be the thinker of the group, right? And so after every game or after every practice, we would sit down and say, okay, what went well? And he always had ideas and plans for improvement. And that sort of says a lot about Ray, because that's sort of his mantra for the rest of his career, is what can we do better? What can we get off the ground? So, Ray, congratulations, and well done.
Ray, congratulations on your induction into the Volleyball BC Hall of Fame. Well deserved.
Hello everyone, it's such a pleasure and an honor to be here, and I want to thank Vale and Harish and the committee who've put my name forward. It's an honor to, when you look around at the people that are involved, and even in this room, it's an honor to be part of you and your group and the volleyball community, as it has been since that day when Gord Chamberlain in Physics 12 came and said, hey, do you want to play volleyball? And I want you to know that I was always surprised why he would ask me. I thought maybe he would rather get Larry Plenner from JO to come and play for the team, but because in fact Gord and I had met playing in grade 9, but we were playing chess. So you see how tall I am and how much skill I had. And the last time I played volleyball was in grade 7. And in grade 7 we learned to play defense like this, what Tim Frick used to call the ducky dig. So I don't know why I was invited to come out, but I did have one sort of secret attribute, and that was enthusiasm. So as maybe Vale said. And so each time the good players like Gord Chamberlain or Alex Musso or Len Brandolini got invited by Vic to the cannon fodder team or to Winfield, after they got invited and I found out, I would always go and ask if I could come too. And so I got on the cannon fodder team, and Ken, you'll be, I don't know if you're pleased to hear, but in the very first time, Ken Witzke went up and spiked in the very first drill, and I blew my thumb off, and it's still double jointed from your spike. When Mike Rockwell and Dale Oman and Bob Vosberg, I know you're here too, all of you guys were way too tall for the cannon fodder duties, and so Gord Chamberlain and myself and all us tall people were recruited by Vic to provide competition for this wonderful volleyball team. And I think Vic said, to be the best, you've got to be with the best. And so the next opportunity for me was Winfield Camp. And again, Vic had invited all of them to go up as staff coaches. And so I went to Vic and I said, you know, could I go to a Winfield Camp? And Vic sort of hesitated for a bit, and then he said, yeah, but you'll have to pay your own way. So I was the first and probably the only Winfield staff coach that had to pay their way to be a staff coach. But Winfield was the best to follow Vic's thing. It was to be with the best. We had Val Keller, and we had Randy Sandifer and other excellent U.S. coaches. And Moo, you're here. So. And well, I've got him down. Give me a minute. And later, coaches like Moo Park, and Japanese coaches like Hiroshi Toyota, Kikuchi, and even the gold medal winning Matsudaira. We're all at Winfield Camp. It's amazing to think. Shortly thereafter, the fall, Vic again asked Gord and I to be the coaches at Templeton High School girls team, which he had coached to the provincials, and we were able to do the same thing. So once again, Vic had sort of created a path, and Gord and I were able to follow along and benefit from him, and that was a wonderful experience. In the spring, I decided to go back to school at SFU, but halfway through, Gord came to me again and said, hey, Vic has got this grant, and I'm sure it was you, Vic, who created that grant from the BCVA so that the two of us could go around to elementary schools, as Gord mentioned in the video. What Gord didn't say is that we were there to promote power volleyball, because the general idea of volleyball, and this is 1970, remember, the general idea of volleyball was it was normally played mainly in nudist camps. And so we were there to change the idea of volleyball. And so we went around to all the schools, as Gord said. We did all the clinics, invited people to community centers, and then Vic even got an extension for us into the summer so we could have kind of Winfield camps at each of the community centers. So we had a week at Renfrew and all these other things. And that was a great experience for us, and helped volleyball in elementary school, I think, improve. Later that fall, after paying my way, I got to go to Winfield Camp, and there was Val Keller and all the great American coaches coaching, and I certainly learned and enjoyed from them. Then in the fall, Vic asked me again if we could coach the high school team, and so we did that, and that was another great experience. The second year I went to Winfield. This time I didn't have to pay, and I got to go to all three camps, which was great. But that was the start of a very important period in volleyball's development. It was the first of the Japanese coaches to come. Hiroshi Toyota came to the camp and really started revolutionizing volleyball. I think, Moo, you came that year or the next year, I think. Or did you come in 1970? I can't remember. That was the opening to volleyball, and I basically spent the whole camp, every free moment, following Moo Park around with a notebook. And after a while, I think he got tired of all my questions, perhaps, and he said, "You should go to Japan and study." So in the winter, I wrote a letter to him saying, could I come to Japan? I'd like to study volleyball, etc., etc. There was a long hesitation, and somewhere in about February, he wrote back saying, and by the way, this was 72, 73 when the oil shock hit, and Japan was very dependent on oil. The price of oil went up from $2 to $20, and all the companies said, no, we're not doing anything. So the following summer, again, I marched out to Winfield, got to coach at all three camps. On the very first day, at lunch, I walked up to the very first Japanese coach, and there were three of them that year, and I said, hello, I met in Toyota last year, I wanted to go to volleyball, could you host me in Japan? Well, fortunately for me, this was a Japanese coach who was a high school English teacher, and I could talk to him. He understood me. And not only that, he had won the All Japan High School Championships, which We have about 300 schools. They have 3,000 schools. It's an incredible thing to win the high school girls championships in Japan. And he had done that after 12 years of coaching, and he was sort of looking for something new. And so anyway, he agreed to host me. And I know that Jane, you, and Helen, all of us have been touched by Kikuchi in one form or another, even Vic, from the knowledge from those Japanese coaches, and especially Kikuchi. And again, where am I? So I'm cutting my things shorter for you, Charles. I didn't know much about Kikuchi, except, he seemed like a really good coach and so on. But once I traveled to Japan, I realized, in 1973, I realized how lucky I was. And we were in Winfield to have him and the other coaches. Because over there, they were like hockey players, very famous people. Kikuchi was a national broadcaster, sort of like, if you're old enough, Howie Meeker sort of thing, doing all the color on the commentary. And Matsudaira was Olympic gold medal coach, and so on. So we were very, very fortunate to have these talented people come. See, I'm cutting even more off. In Japan, I had the opportunity to watch Kikuchi's team practice. They practiced 7 days a week, 2 of them on gravel outside, as long as it wasn't raining. And voila, who should show up but Marianne Branson and the Burnaby Central volleyball team, right? And so it was a wonderful experience. I went to visit a semi-professional team. They didn't have professional teams because the Olympic Games was amateur. So the teams in those days were employees and Fujifilm, which Kikuchi went to, had both a men's team and a women's team. The men's team later was Koyama, who became the Olympic coach for Japan, and the women's team was very good as well. So the point is, I was there and I had the opportunity to see the world's best volleyball. Kikuchi also arranged for me to go to one of Matsudaira's practices, a regular practice there. I was the only outsider in the gym, and watched the gold medal winning team 12 months after they'd won the Olympics. So it was a fantastic experience. Later, Kikuchi and Toyota both came back to Canada, and Kikuchi spent most of his time in BC helping coaches and players from Prince George to Greenfield to all over the country, and I bet you a lot of the people. How many know Kikuchi before I started talking? Put your hand up if you... Okay, so that's a lot of influence, and you think, Kent Andrews, if that influence is multiplied by all the people you've influenced, those Japanese coaches have had a tremendous influence on our volleyball development. When I returned home, Vic again invited me to be involved in the new provincial team that he was developing as development coordinator, and asked me to start on the blue team, which was sort of a second-tier team. Len Brandolini, who's over there, Gord and Alex, my high school buddies, helped me with the team, and Patty, I think you were involved, and lots of other people were involved in those blue team programs. I moved to Kamloops briefly for a couple of years because Kikuchi said, if you want to be a volleyball coach, you should be a teacher. So I switched from science over to teaching. And there we did the first Bantam Championships, as the video said. I came back to BC, or to Vancouver rather. We coached BCO, and put your hand up if you're one of the BCO alumni. So Jerry and Ian and so on, with Brian Watson, and who later became national coach. To paraphrase Greg Russell, I think there are 5 things that we achieved in the years that I was development coordinator, and here they are. The first was with the help of Hugh and Fred Jackson, Hugh Wong and Fred Jackson. We designed the regional provincial team because we'd had only the blue and gold team, one team. Secondly, during my time, we developed beach volleyball. And Jim, I know you're around here somewhere, Jim Clive. And with Jim's enthusiasm, we developed volleyball. And you can ask Jim after who won the first BC championships, and he'll tell you the story because I don't have enough time. Third, we were able to hire students and develop BC's summer co-ed recreational leagues. So we hired about a dozen students and created all those leagues that you see at Spanish Banks and so on. And I believe it's the same ones that continue today because the equipment was stored up until a couple of years ago in the same place we did. In 1984, we had another great opportunity. Doug Baird, who's here, invited me to join him in making the Olympic film in the Los Angeles Olympics. That what's called the technical or educational film is made in each Olympic Games. And so we were able to take some cameramen down there, and more importantly, Dale Ullman and Hugh Long and Alan Ahak, who also became president of the CVA, and Fred Jackson and Chris Marshall. All of us were able to go down, and originally I thought we'd be able to get tickets to a couple of games. No. We had passes, 12 passes to the whole men's and women's Olympic Games. What a fantastic opportunity it was for us. And I think, Doug, we still have some of the films from that. If you, some of the men's and women's teams, or men's team that's in the Olympics, you can see yourself in real life. Oh, hi, you guys. And finally, I want to mention the Awate BC Exchange, which started with Kikuchi. It built relationships and upgraded our knowledge and awareness of elite volleyball. Through that exchange, we connected coaches for years. I think everyone who's been on this stage has been influenced, Helen, Patty, Vic, and I, and Jane and I, all by those Japanese coaches and their generosity. Our teams have become stronger since 1974, and now I think we can compete very effectively against those Japanese. But when they were in the top of the world, they were generous to us and helped us. Right? So, and I hope we keep that history in mind when we're dealing with other people. Well, volleyball's had a huge influence on my life. Not a week passes when I don't benefit from friendships, like I went skiing with Herb Crawley this past week, or other benefits that are derived from my life through volleyball. This is due to the other people that have invited me to participate. I responded enthusiastically to those opportunities, and I've tried in return to pay it forward by creating opportunities for others as well. Thank you.